Welcome back to the Boss Mode walkthrough series. This is Chapter 8, Castle Talindra Normal Mode. Anyone who's run this dungeon before in Champion Campaign probably remembers it as being one of the first sort of really difficult dungeons that you came across. Looking through the heroes here, what makes this dungeon so dangerous is the fact that we got all of these assassins, and there's actually a bunch of them that come around, and you'll see them in multitude in many of the different rooms here. So dealing with the assassins can be a little bit tough because they generally hit pretty hard, and you can't take along your big glass cannons that would normally do tons of damage like Cobalt. This is why I chose to run the Undead team, because they are a lot higher health pool in my opinion. They have better defenses and better runes for my team. Now, if you took pretty much any armored team, you could probably do just fine. The thing to note with the other armored teams, though, there's just not really the necessary synergies out there in order to really make this one go effectively. There are a couple things in this dungeon that you do have to watch out for, but if you've leveled up and ruined your undead team pretty well, it shouldn't be too challenging. So you can see right off the bat here, we really only had one fast enemy to start with, and because she's yellow, she's not going to pose much of a threat. A lot of people worry that the yellow is going to be kind of a downer against Braum and Zom. For the most part, though, I've run this a number of times, and they just simply, even with the elemental bonus, they just do not hit very hard. The issues that you're going to run into are when you have enemies that do extra damage towards any particular element. We've seen that with some of the other ones, with some of the green jabbers that would run by and do extra damage to Hansuke. So you have to watch out for little things like that. For the most part, though, if Yorick and Hansuke do their epics and keep defense up and keep health up, there's really nothing overly challenging in this dungeon. But you do have to, like I said, you do have to keep an eye on your health pool, because you do have an elemental disadvantage on a couple of different instances. It's always important to keep the vigilance up on Yorick. Now, we saw just a few seconds ago that Emily clone did some damage against Zom, and Hansuke didn't do anything about it. You have to remember how that process works. Remember, it doesn't really go against special moves or critical attacks. So when she did an attack like that, basically she was able to do some pretty good damage to Zom. So walking through this dungeon could be a little bit slow, but in my opinion, if you slow play it, that's probably a little bit safer. If you want to use another team of armored guys, I definitely suggest like Igorok and High King Valken. Both of those two together, because of the shatter damage that you'll get from Igorok, and if you've gotten his epic shatter team is also very good as well. The downside to that, though, is there are green heroes in this dungeon, so you have to plan for some heavier damage coming against those guys. Even though they are armored, you are going to take some extra elemental damage from the nature enemies. So plan on appropriate healer for that, and ultimately, if you're going to go with an armored route, I might even suggest bringing along Yoko. Yoko does extra damage against rogues, and plus he would give a good person to taunt with. Somebody that you don't need to waste time attacking with. Your main thing is going to be to use his self-heal, his taunt, and his daze. And that would allow for Igorok and High King Valken to do their attacks. You almost certainly will have to bring some sort of a healer. Due to the enemies involved here and the high level of crit, I would probably suggest against someone like Yasmin. She just doesn't have the health in order to survive against a nature-heavy dungeon, and also a nature-heavy dungeon that's heavy with fast heroes. Even if those fast heroes aren't nature enemies, Yasmin's not going to survive long. So what I would suggest is someone more like Augustus. He's got a good single-target heal, plus he has his Aegis shield, and plus he's not going to die very easily because he's armored. So if you're used to using him, and you have him ruined up, he's actually a good choice to bring along for an all-nature team. And then once you get down to the final boss, that's really where you'll just have some decisions to make in terms of how you want to take that out. And you'll see from what my video shows here, the final boss isn't overly difficult if you get there with the appropriate team. So I think this is the first instance where we've had two fast heroes in there. You do have to watch out for, if they would have been both yellow, it's possible that Zom could have gotten killed off there. So using my vigilance again just to help keep him up. You can see that those little archers, when they critical, they do a second attack. Being that it was just a primary attack, Hansuke was able to soak that. But we're getting to the point where we're a little bit short on health, which is why we use the Taste for Brains here, just to top things off. Had that not killed them, I probably would have used Brahm's Team Leech. But if you know anything about my Undead team and how I like to heal, I do like to keep around that Team Leech for somebody that Yorick has marked, because it will pretty much guarantee a full health refill. So other than that, there's nothing overly exciting going on here right now. There's only a couple of minutes left, so I'm not going to bother fast forwarding. So if you want to fast forward through towards the boss fight, you can. You're not going to miss much here otherwise. It's just couple of basic attacks. I'm not really going to use any special moves or anything like that. Usually like to save those until the boss, unless something horrible comes up. So another instance of two fast heroes. And that's one of the things I was mentioning before. We saw that Hansuke took a ton of damage there because of the amplified damage. And you can see as I was running this, I was a little bit shocked, and I wanted to double check that was indeed the case. Fortunately, he's got a pretty decent health pool to start with, but you have to remember something like that. If he was killed there, he doesn't get his honorable death trait because he wasn't protecting anybody. So if he dies non-protecting, that's basically on you to bring a revive potion. But after those fast heroes get out of the way, those other guys aren't really going to do too much damage. It's just a matter of determining who do you want to kill with Brahm and Zom. And typically when I go through this, I have a couple of different routines. We saw Zom kill the yellow archer. One of the things that I like to consider is who's going to be doing damage next before I can actually get a turn to attack again. And anytime you have fast heroes that have an elemental advantage against Brahm or Zom because they're not hugely defensive, I don't want those guys getting another attack, and that's why I kill the fast heroes first. I left the other fast hero because she was diseased. I'm not usually afraid of disease heroes regardless of what the situation is, so anybody who's diseased usually tends to get skipped over for the next turn just because I don't feel threatened by them. This last room here before the boss is really just cleanup, so really at this point here it's just a matter of using some basic attacks to let the skills replenish. I'm ultimately looking for things like make sure that Hansuke can use vigilance if I'm planning on using that in the boss room, and hopefully just try to get some enemy kills with Brahm and Zom so they can top their life off. And then if we get lucky, Yorick will throw an epic out there and heal for the last kill shot. So what I did here with the Guardian Strike, it's not uncommon for me to do this because if I know that I can kill the enemy going into the boss room and have that extra little buff of defense, depending on what the boss level is, it's always beneficial to have that in the chamber because then you know you can use Mark for Death on the first turn. So looking over some of the buffs here, there's a couple of important ones to watch for. We see that the little first girl, the fast archer, she has extra damage against nature. Talindra herself has extra damage against water. So we do have to watch out for that. And depending on who she chooses to pick on, you're just basically at her mercy. We saw that the first girl, Duchess here, really didn't do much with hers. Even though she got 2 attacks in, really didn't do any damage. Now, going back to what I said before in terms of who I'm deciding to actually kill, this actually plays a part in this one too. Being that she already got her first attack on, I don't want her whipping out some sort of a second attack that might be even more dangerous, like a massive AoE, which is why I ultimately choose to mark her instead of Talindra. This way, when I do my attacks, I know that I can finish her off in this round and that she won't get another turn. And then it's just a matter of worrying about Talindra. And you'll see Talindra in just a second, but neither of these girls are going to hold up well against a Kozar attack, especially if she's marked. She's pretty much, she's literally marked for death. There's no chance of her surviving. And now with Talindra, depending on the team you brought along, if you decide to go with that all water team with Augustus as a healer, this is what you're going to have in store for you. If you take a quick look here, she did 892,000 damage to Yorick. I don't care what kind of buffs you have, you're not surviving that. So if she chooses to attack him, he's pretty much dead. You need that revive potion. But fortunately, after that, you have Brahm and Zom. There's no way she can survive that. So even though she does get a cheap shot in there, Zom just hits her for 100,000 unmarked. So easy peasy. So think about the team you want to bring along, and then we'll see you around next time for the champion mode. Thanks for watching.